Hello, my name is Miguel Neves and I am the editor-in-chief of Event Manager blog. Welcome to this episode of the Event Manager podcast, where I am joined by Maarten Vanneste, the creator of the meeting architecture, manifesto and movement. I talked to Maarten during this episode about the meeting architecture concept and how it adds value to meetings, and that's really the original objective of it. We talk about training in online meetings and how he always focuses on small group conversations that he really believes add the most value to meetings. He talks about how interaction delivers outstanding results, even for those that don't believe in the concept and who would rather stick with a keynote or a webinar style format. We also talk about how keynotes and small conversations go really well together and are really not incompatible, and how you can make a great conference out of keynotes and then small conversations. We talk about the development of the groundbreaking Hybrid Fresh conference, a conference that was hybrid way before it was fashionable, and different iterations of that event. We also talk about the challenges of connecting in-person audiences with online audiences at hybrid events, something that Maarten himself has been experimenting with for a long time. We talk about the bandwidth of human connections, and we also talk about planning for serendipity, which is always an interesting challenge for any type of events. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and if you enjoy it, please do rate it so that everybody else can also find it and enjoy it as well. Thank you very much.
Now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phlife.com to learn more.
So I'm joined today by the amazing Maarten Vanneste. Maarten, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. For those who don't know Maarten, I met Maarten in, I think, 2008 or something like that, I believe through MPI. And Maarten wrote a book called The Meeting Architecture Manifesto, which I actually used for dissertation and research and lots of different things through my career. So very inspiring book. So I wanted to welcome you on the show and maybe invite you to tell us a little bit about your background. You know, who is Maarten Vanneste for anybody who doesn't know, and how did you become Maarten Vanneste, if you will?
Yeah, thank you, Miguel. It's great to be here on the show. Great to see you again. My background. I'm the middle of 5 kids in a family. My father was blinded in the Second World War, but he's a very innovative man and a very resourceful man. He I think was an inspiration, but also probably, the source of the genes in me that make me always look for new stuff. I'm always interested in change and innovation. And so I started with my hobby, which is photography. And then I moved into video. Just before I became 18, I bought my first video camera in the 1980 something, very early 80s. And from there, everything just rolled from one to another, and video became audiovisual became meetings, and my first meeting was for a local company from Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals, and the passion really hit me right there. It's when people get together, I think that's a wonderful moment in life, and that's where it all started.
And were you aware that there was this thing called the meetings industry or the events industry?
No, nobody is. This still the same, I think. And no, of course. And I was happy to discover the meeting industry in 90 something. I happened to, stumble over MPI one way or another, or a magazine or something, and they introduced me to MPI. And then I heard that they had this conference, and I wanted to go immediately, but I was too late. I think it was sold out, or it just happened. So I couldn't go or whatever. And since then, I've done all the MPI conferences, etc. Both in Europe and abroad. And then ultimately also as a speaker, always curious to find out from meeting planners why they organize meetings and what's behind it, and so.
Okay, so your AV company was called Abbott Meeting Innovators. Abbott. Yes, yeah. I remember the story of Abbott being one of the first words in the directory, right? So ABB, I think that's
ABBIT, yeah.
Very, very clever. But you also you're a CMM. And you created the Meeting Design Institute, which I think you're still involved with. Like Abbott is not something you're involved with anymore, but the Meeting Design Institute is, correct? Yeah.
Correct, yes.
And then in 2007, you wrote the Meeting Architecture, a manifesto. So what led you to write that book? What was missing in the industry that you wanted to kind of say?
Yeah, I think everything started 10 years before I wrote this book, when I went to EIBTM in Geneva still. And I went there and I discovered a wonderful industry, a great group of people. And I saw a lot of the stands, most of the stands, 98% of all the stands, I think, was hospitality, and that's of course is fundamental to meetings, but it's not everything. And me, with the background that I have, and looking for value, how do we create value in meetings? I was always asking that question: why do people come together? Why do people organize these meetings? And the answer is never, well, because we want to travel, or because we want to have people in hotels, or because we want to feed people. That's never the purpose, although it's fundamental to the industry. And so I felt this need I felt the lack of, let's say this inside of meetings, actually, how meetings function, what they do, the presentations, and how we improve those, and how we improve networking and learning at meetings. And so that immediately struck me as fascinating. This whole industry, calling itself the meeting industry, was actually more like the hospitality industry, I would say, for 98.5%.
Okay.
That's why.
And do you feel like that's still the case?
Yeah, I think there has been some shift. Maybe instead of 98.5%, it's now 98%. But I think there is overall, the influence of the hospitality industry is obviously very logic and understandable. It's a heavyweight financially in what it takes to organize a meeting, and I remember Roger Tondeur saying, he's one of the big industry leaders in conferences and association management, etc. He said, "Yeah, we do this, but and this is a long conversation I have with him. At the end of the day, this design of meetings thing seems to fall off the table always, because there is all this nitty-gritty around who gets which room, and the VIPs need to travel, and there's all sorts of logistical challenges, and a lot of money goes into that, and that takes all the attention. So I think that is a natural tendency of meeting planners, meeting professionals, to automatically have this hospitality side of meetings as a priority in a way, and it takes all the attention and all the money. And then at the end, we should maybe think about changing the format of the meeting, and then it's too late and there's no more money. And so that's kind of it's a natural. People love parties, love food, love a great hotel and great destination. So it's fundamental to what we do. But
I think
balance.
Yeah, and I think I'd like you to explain the meeting architecture principle a little bit further, because I think it's an interesting name, but what do you mean by it for anybody who doesn't know? But we're recording this in May of 2021, and we're in a moment where at least in theory, the industry is starting up again. There's events starting up. There's vaccinations. The pandemic looks like, at least in the Western world, is beginning to be resolved. So it's a unique opportunity maybe to rethink, or there's a big desire to go back to in-person meetings. Is it an opportunity to rethink that? But tell me a little bit more about meeting architecture specifically, because I know you differentiate it from meeting design a little bit, and there's a bit of a responsibility around that. Or do you think that was something that is not really applicable anymore?
Well, it's always very interesting in the meeting industry how things get names and how, we use a lot of acronyms, and we talk about virtual meetings, while they're actually not virtual, they're real meetings, etc. But, that's just a name discussion, which is really not important. I think when I talk about design, I talk about this stage in the work of a meeting architect, the stage when you're actually designing. Before that, you have to identify the objectives. I think if you know the objectives, you can design the right vehicle to drive those objectives. And so for me, design is a stage, but I know that the meeting industry means designing better meetings based on objectives and probably also measuring the results. It's fine, whatever you want to call it. I think a meeting architect is a person that focuses on the content side, on the effectiveness of the meeting, but not so much on the hospitality and the travel and the logistical side of meetings. So identifying.
And do you think that
objectives,
we're in a unique opportunity now for meeting architects, or for aspiring meeting architects?
I don't know. I don't think a lot has changed. We had a break, we had a pause, and I think what has changed is the I wouldn't say embracing of technology. I think people were forced, to use the technology, and have now a bigger or a higher level of confidence, I think, with online meetings. I think they all discovered a lot of opportunities and possibilities, and so that's definitely a good thing. Whether that will help us in creating more effective meetings, I'm not sure, because I've seen what people call an online conference, and it's actually a series of webinars. So I don't think the challenge has gone. I think there is maybe a set of new challenges, but fundamentally the things remain the same. We need to do a better job in bringing people together, making people meet, making people get to know other people, increasing the networking, the quality and the quantity of networking above and beyond everything. I think that's the unique side. That's the unique thing that happens at meetings, and I think we need a lot of innovation there in improving the networking side, both online and offline, or on site. Online.
One of our common friends, Ruud Jensen, talks a lot about limitations and how limitations can improve, or I guess force creativity. And in one way you could see the lack of in-person meeting as that type of limitation, right? But you don't. Have you seen innovative virtual or online events that you think are a result of that creative process, or that limitation that boosts creativity?
Well, I know that a lot of the students that I've trained around online meetings in the past months, that they are doing a lot of online stuff that they've never done before. So I think that's a big success. That's pushed by the crisis, pushed by the limitations of not being able to do in-person meetings, and that's a good thing. They've all discovered, and some of them more successful than in on-site meetings. They had bigger meetings than before, they had more participants than before. So yeah, I think that definitely is happening.
Okay. Tell me a bit about this training that you're doing. There's other things that I know you've done in the past that I wanted to mention, but tell me a little bit about the type of training that you've been working on lately.
So the training that we've done was for online meeting design. So it's about how to do an online meeting that is more effective. And then, of course, you have to see a number of technical things like, the equipment and internet connections and, what to do when with speakers and how to brief participants. And there's a lot of things. But I think the most important thing that we trained was about the scripting. How to make a script that works and how to keep those core purposes of meetings central to what we do and not do webinars. So I think we made the mistake for many years now, or it's a weak point of what we've done in the past is we just give speakers a stage and they speak and that's it. While there's so much more you can do in a room with people and a speaker. And the same challenge we have in online meetings. So the training looked at how you can have small group conversations, and I think that's a big deal. If you have 5 people, 6 people, and give them 10 minutes to talk about the topic that was just presented by the speaker, magic happens. People love that, or most people love it. And that's just great stuff. And I think it works really well. Participants in the training, got the tips and tricks and examples of how to get that small group conversation in an online meeting, for example.
Okay. I like engaging meetings. I like conversations. I like small groups. But it's not for everybody. And I've had very interesting conversations with smart people online saying, you know what, I don't think my attendees want this engagement. It's intimidating sometimes, the small meeting group and the camera on and all those kind of things. What do you say to that?
I say to that that it's a gut feeling. And if you try and you measure and you ask participants just a few questions, and I've done dozens of those, you get crazy high scores in how people enjoyed small group conversations versus sitting down and listening to a speaker. Mm-hmm. We had the same thing in physical meetings, in-person meetings, where some people say, yeah, I'm not coming to this event to talk to my peers, I'm coming here for the speakers. Well, it's the same now. Some people say that, and some people prefer not to do that. I wonder, why don't they just look at the YouTube video then? And then you're alone. You don't need to talk to anyone. You're in your house. You don't have to travel. You don't have to go anywhere. Why do you come to a conference for that? That's a whole discussion. But fundamentally, check it. Just don't say it because you think it's the case. I've heard many people say that, and when you do it, and you look at the numbers, you ask people, did you learn from the speaker? Did you learn from the other participants? Did you meet new people? Did you enjoy this session? How did this session feel? Did it feel like 90 minutes? Or was it longer or shorter? If you ask those questions, you'll see that people thoroughly enjoy those small group conversations and that they really feel that they met somebody that they might even reconnect to after the event. And I think that's the magic, the networking is so important.
So in a way, you're merging the networking and the content in one high power session.
Yeah, it's very simple. There is no rocket science. So you give people some time. You give them a few participants in a small group. If you have 100 people, make 20 groups of 5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you give them time, and the topic is what was just presented by the speaker. Do you agree? Is it interesting? Do you want to add something? Did you do this? Will you do this? Etc. Just talk about what the speaker was saying. So that's the content leading the conversation. And you and I and everybody else very quickly learns from a small group of people talking about this topic who is of interest to you. People you've never seen or heard before, and you talk to each other about this topic. It's a great way of getting to know new people.
In terms of the marketing, I love this topic. I like creating these things, but I feel that most events, when it comes to promoting, when it comes to selling registration, when it comes to the business model, rely on speakers, rely on the keynote kind of marketing. Is that just human nature? Do you feel that we just are attracted to that, but actually will get a better experience from the peer conversations? Or is there a conference that needs to be a bit braver and not rely on speakers or keynotes?
I think it's very natural. You know, if there's a famous person and a great topic, etc., the learning in people's minds and also in the minds of their bosses is crucially important. Nobody will spontaneously mention networking as the number one reason. Well, they do for going to a conference, but it's less obvious. But I think you need to combine both. You can have your keynote speakers that are famous and will attract people. Also, you know, the destination and the venue are also important to attract people. So I think you still need to do those things, but it's not because you have a good speaker that you have to force everybody else to shut up while this person is talking and give that person 45 minutes and then move on to the next. We need to redistribute our time. And it doesn't mean the speaker doesn't get 45 minutes anymore. It means you get a 90-minute session and 45 minutes is for the speaker and 45 minutes is for the participants. But you chunk it up and you mix it up in a script of seven lines. And
so it's perfectly compatible with keynote speakers. It's just not Absolutely. Filling a conference or an event with keynote speakers and no time to discuss. Yeah. That's really where it's an issue.
Yeah, it's not a lot of work more, but it is a little more work, you know, to create a script and to help the speaker and to make sure that this actually happens and make sure that the participants stop in time, etc. You need kind of maybe a little more time, a little more effort, and maybe also a facilitator, you know, that manages this process, so it works well. But I think, on the other hand, the value that you create for your participants is so much higher.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
So we skipped ahead a little bit as well. One of the things I know about you, and I've participated in a few, is the Fresh Conference. And the Fresh Conference is perhaps the conference representation of the meeting architecture concept. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's definitely a playground for innovation. So we always try to experiment and introduce new things. And risking a bit of, not always, it's not always a hit, you know. Sometimes you just do something and you evaluate, and then it doesn't seem to be that great. But that's the kind of risk we can take with the Fresh Conference. People coming to the Fresh Conference always have been open to that innovation, and it's kind of part of the genomics of Fresh.
Well, it's still, to this date, it's one of the few hybrid events that I've been to, and I think it was I don't like the term truly hybrid, but it was a very hybrid concept for the first 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah,
with a sort of large audience and a live video feed, and then since I think 2017, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a sort of multi-hub concept. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, we've done 2 years of multi-hub, and I think that's a very powerful concept, especially now with some borders opening up or national meetings being possible, but not yet international meetings. So it's a great concept for having groups of people still come together, but not everybody in the same place because of the regulations or the limitations that we have. And then the multi-hub.
For those who are not familiar, can you explain what you mean by multi-hub and how it plays out?
Well, I don't like to use the term true multi-hub to go back to what you were saying about true hybrid. But yeah, I think the true multi-hub meeting is a meeting where all the hubs, which are different cities or different hotel venues or different meeting rooms or different countries. So all these groups of people in different places are connected in sound and in video in all directions, so that it's not a webcast to groups of participants. It is a real unification of these groups. So you can actually have conversations between individuals that are in different places, or you can have a speaker in one place and in another place, and then everybody splits up in each of the cities, and they can go to one of those speakers. So it's a high density connection where you have groups meeting groups in a way. So yeah.
Okay. And so, one of the things we've been looking at EventMB is for hybrid events, and of course hybrid can take many different formats, but we're kind of questioning whether the on-site or the in-person groups want to meet with the online groups, because I feel like most events that are going hybrid are actually looking to separate those groups and do networking. But when you're sitting in front of a computer and the person you're networking with is also sitting in front of a computer, it seems natural. And when you're on site, it seems natural to meet with other people who are physically there with you. But this kind of trying to bring those two audiences together, particularly at the individual level, is that something that we want to do, or is that something that kind of breaks the experience? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, we've done something like this at one of the Fresh conferences. The thing is that everybody that sits in a group is in one of the hubs, is in one of the cities. Every individual that wants to have an individual conversation with somebody else needs to have a laptop or a device, that has a camera and preferably a headset. So it takes you out of that on-site group for a while, and that can be important. It depends on who the other person is that you're talking to. But that individual could be in another hub. It could be an individual that is at home, but it could also be an individual that is in another hub. So, in that sense, it's maybe a little early now, a little too early to do that. I think it requires some innovative software that hasn't been written yet, where every individual, whether he or she is at home, or whether this individual is in a group somewhere, a small group or a big group, but that every individual is also part of a list of people that you can choose to connect with on an individual base. You can make one-on-one appointments, and it shouldn't matter whether you're in a group or at home. You do need to set apart some time for that in the script. You need this networking moment and then actually do something, actively support it and actively organize it. I think we need some additional software to be able to do that.
Well, we've been speaking to a lot of app providers, which, meeting apps have been sort of irrelevant for the last 15 months or so. But from what I've seen of the cross integration between virtual event platforms and app providers, I think we might be there. There are apps now that are using very low latency video formats, proprietary formats that now enable you to have a almost real-time video feed. So you have the keynote speaker on your phone, provided you have enough bandwidth, and you can watch that almost in real time. I think there's maybe a half a second delay, something like that, which I think is fine if you're not in the room, and if you're in the room, it might be a bit confusing. And these apps allow you to do one-on-one calls instantly within the same environment, so within the same event environment. So I think we might be there, technologically speaking, again, with the caveat of the bandwidth, or 5G might be, the next step. But
because you need video calls, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But still, I'm struggling a little bit with the idea of sort of dragging people away from a face-to-face environment to have a video call, right? Because we're kind of saying people in a group, people coming together, that's really where the magic happens. And then we're kind of putting technology, won't technology become a barrier there, even if you have really low latency video?
Yeah, I think the highest social bandwidth, the highest bandwidth between people is when you meet in the flesh. You're in the same room and you sit next to each other and you talk to each other. That's the best quality. And I think what we're having here is video and sound, a good quality video connection is the second best thing. Mm-hmm. So when somebody does the effort to go to a meeting and pays the fee to be at a conference, for example, I would agree with you that it's kind of a challenge to then all of a sudden take that person away for a call that actually could happen any day, any time. So why would we force that into this magical moment of people that are together? Future
maybe the solution is to have some sort of calendar appointments set up where you have 10 calendar appointments set up in your diary for the next week, and as you meet interesting people you fill them up. I don't know,
this is something that has already been around for a while. Are we organizing meetings? Are we managing a community? So the meeting obviously is the big moment for a community, but do we stop there or do we continue? And I think that's, been discussed for a while. And I guess, meetings face to face is where the magic happens. People get together, they meet each other, they talk, and they say, let's have a coffee later on. And that's when it happens. That's when people meet and when they start new projects or, support each other or, really important stuff. So I think we should keep on doing that and make sure that is done well, because it should not be an accidental meeting, like those two doctors at this conference of what is it called, diabetes conference. They were both ill and they had to stay in their room, but since they were both ill, they were talking to each other all the time. And this is where something started, the biggest research project ever in diabetes. That wasn't an accidental meeting. We should make those things happen.
Yeah, we should
be the organizers of those kind of new connections. And we should measure that. We should measure how many new connections did people make and how many of those have led to a business relationship or a project or a collaboration or, whatever it is. And that's the kind of effectiveness we need to look for. And I think we're getting close, measuring that kind of effectiveness. It's been recognized as an impact that we have with meetings and conferences. So I think, over time, this is going to be maybe a more natural thing to do. Spend more attention to those things.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about that is I agree. Yet I do also see the point that in the last 15 months, I've still managed to meet people. And I've still managed to have good discussions and business conversations. I don't know if my best ideas have come in the last 15 months, but I think that it wasn't that bad, and just because I couldn't meet face to face with people, I still made friends. I'm good friends with people that I've never met face to face. I've only met in video calls, right?
Same here.
It is a bit, it's kind of contradictory sometimes, or at least you want to find a balance, right? It's weird to try to pull people away from an in-person meeting, but at the same time, if that's a really important meeting or if that's really interesting, then it may be worthwhile. I don't know what the perfect solution is.
Yeah, I think if it happens, it should be limited, or it will be limited, because people don't want to be taken away from this unique moment. I mean, it's in the moment of being there together, sitting at the same table, that is still of a higher value of all the online stuff that we do, even if it's the best online stuff ever. and good online stuff can generate a lot of new connections as well. But, if we still organize face-to-face meetings or on-site meetings or in-person meetings, I think we need to respect that in the moment, in the same place, uniqueness of that event and give people time to actually be there together.
I had an interesting chat with Paul Nunes da Silva and Miriam Hadness, who I didn't know before. We were on a call on the IAF, the Facilitators Network, and she made a really interesting point, which I wanted to share with you, which is I talked about the value of face-to-face meetings and those bar conversations that you have at the end of the day that can lead to really amazing things. And she made the point that actually the magic of meeting face-to-face shouldn't rely on bar conversations. You should build those into the actual event. And at first I was a bit kind of taken back and maybe even a bit defensive, but then I kind of reflected on what she said and I was like, actually, that's a really good point. Because, we're both able-bodied, white, reasonably well-off, educated people that do well in bar conversations. That's not the majority of the world, right? Absolutely. And if I'm an introvert, if I'm not able-bodied, if I don't drink alcohol, if I can't be close to people, if there's a pandemic, there's lots of reasons why bar conversations can't be what we rely on to make it worthwhile to attend events, right? And you have to flip that round and create those serendipity and synergetic moments in the event as part of the event and not rely on the bar later, right?
Yeah, we could talk about this for hours because serendipity and bars and sitting next to people that you already know, there is a lot of stuff to be said about that. For example, serendipity, it shouldn't even be serendipity. If you have a conference of 1,000 people and you have 10 sessions and in your session is 100 people, those people are people with the same interest as you in this topic, in this speaker. So that's already a filter. If then somebody can make sure that there is only strangers sitting at the same table, you split friends at the door, which is very easy and can be done very friendly way. You sit with strangers at a table during a whole session, and in that session there is 3 moments of 10 minutes for conversation with those people. I mean, that's not serendipity anymore. It's kind of close to a really organized. Sitting with strangers, talking about a topic that is close to your heart, all of your hearts, and that makes things happen. But that doesn't exclude the bar, because you meet somebody at a table like that, and you have a great conversation, and maybe you exchange business cards, and then later at the bar, you see that this person is there, you go to that person, and you continue the conversation, and that's already 2 conversations in one day. Very quickly, you go from, I know this person, to I like this person, to I actually even trust this person, because you already had 2 conversations in one day with that person. Your image of that person becomes really complete. So serendipity is nice, and we can help serendipity a little bit.
It's almost as if you have a blueprint for these things and you can architect these serendipitous moments.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's what I think we should do. I think the value of meetings will double or triple if we do this well. If we just have speakers on stage and we just give them the room and we give them 45 minutes, that's just lazy. I'm sorry to say this, meeting planners, but that's just lazy. I mean, it's because you don't have time for anything else, maybe. I mean, okay, so I don't want to insult you. So it's because you don't have time for anything else. We need to find time. We need to spend more time on this. It does take time. Maybe we need 2 people instead of 1 for planning a meeting. One looking at logistics and hospitality, and the other one being the meeting architect, maybe. I don't know. But
that may be something that you suggested, I don't know, maybe 13 years ago or 14 years ago now.
Yeah, but change comes slowly, and it's very natural for people and very logic as well, looking at the finances, to focus on those things that are fundamental.
Great. I mean, Maarten, we could talk about this forever, so I don't want to take up much more of your time, but I wanted to kind of touch on 2 things. One is technology and innovation, and if you have any tools, any techniques, anything that you've been looking at that that you're kind of betting on for the future or that you're excited about that you could share? And the other thing I wanted to ask is if you could make a recommendation for the next person that we should interview on the podcast, because I like to get this slightly serendipitous chain reaction going of people that you think would be interesting to think. But I'll let you think about that and maybe go back to the first question about the technology or innovation that you're excited about.
Well, the technology that I think is currently very important is installing. I don't know if you would call it technology, but it's like having a good kind of a studio available in companies. So in-house small studios or rooms or with table and a good microphone, good acoustics and good light. A room that people can book like a meeting room, where you would have.
So like a hybrid studio, but maybe not necessarily a full-blown studio, but a hybrid studio at home or a decent home studio or a decent office studio.
Yeah, I think a lot of speakers should be ashamed of themselves, and maybe I'm not the best example at this moment either, because my studio is kind of a mess at the moment, but because I have a little pause in my work there. But I think if you're a speaker and you get paid to speak, you should have some good equipment and some good bandwidth and some good setup with light and everything. So home studios for speakers, yes, and then small in-company studios for demonstrations with clients, for small meetings, because those change the way people see you and the way they perceive your message as well. I think that's quite important. It doesn't need to cost an arm and a leg. You don't need to you don't necessarily need to have the best quality top cameras and 4 of those, and then a switcher and a technician and everything. It could be a single camera setup, but decent stuff, acoustics, lights, microphone, all of that. I think that's at the moment something people should really look at and invest a few thousand euros.
And is there any kind of upcoming technology that you think would even take that further? Anything? Or you think a good home studio would be more than sufficient? Yeah,
and use cable. If it's at home, try to use cable. If you're a professional in meetings and you use it a lot, then I'd say don't rely on Wi-Fi.
And green screen or no green screen?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to use one. So if you're a company, your background could be, very impactful. So yeah, I would do one if you have like a small studio. It can be a curtain, by the way, so you can open it up and you have a white wall, or it could be the green screen with whatever background you want. Excellent.
Thanks for that, Maarten. And the last question, who do you think we should have next on the podcast? Have you had a chance to think about that?
That is a tough one. I think there is this guy in New York. Let me talk to him. Is it okay if I come back to you with this?
Of course. Well, this sounds like a really in-depth recommendation. So I think
he has huge LinkedIn groups.
Okay.
And we helped him to use small group conversation as a weapon of success in his online activities. And I think you will have some great feedback from what he has learned over the past few months by doing those networking events based on his LinkedIn groups. Okay. Yeah, I think I might recommend that guy.
Perfect.
I'll let you know.
Great stuff, Maarten. Well, thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the experience, and keep listening to the Event Manager podcast. I don't know if you're a big podcast fan, if you have other podcasts that you regularly listen to, but hopefully you'll make this one of those.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It was great to be here.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. And we are joined now by Nick Borelli from All Seated for an extended conversation during this podcast. Nick, thank you so much for joining us once again. It's a pleasure to have you talk through this podcast and extend the ideas in it. How are you today?
I'm great. Well, I mean, that was an amazing conversation. I mean, anytime I have an opportunity to get some insights from Maarten, he's got such a, I don't know, it's like the Galapagos Island of event strategy mind. Like it seems like he created a lot of this stuff himself, and it's so pure because I think it's not necessarily just regurgitated versions of other things that we all kind of in our echo chambers sort of just say the same words. He has different ways of saying everything, and I always find that to be so interesting.
Yeah, always a great mind of the industry, and interesting to hear what he has to say in slightly different angles. So one of the things we talked a lot about was this idea of forced use of technology. And I know that you had some thoughts on that as well.
It just sung out at me because I'm like, man, that's it. I've been saying like using technology at gunpoint, but I think I like his better. Mine's a little bit more American. So maybe I could soften that a bit and use force use. But yeah, I think that there is something to be said about there being a difference between embrace of technology and this idea of forced use of technology. And I was just like, man, I have such fears around that because I've spent years and years doing lots of presentations around bridging the gap between technology and its implementation and use with live event professionals in order for them to really have all the tools they need to get the things they need, because I think that event planners shouldn't be on the most stressful list. I think event planners should be considered, rock stars in organizations. I think they should have to wear a lot less hats. I think a lot of things, that would come really from being able to show what you do and the outcomes explicitly. And I think that technology is the way to do that. And I just hope that after we went through this, this bad year, that hopefully not only did you just learn how to use the technology, but you also learned that it is your friend, it's a tool, it's neutral, it's not trying to take your passion away from you, it's not doing any of those things. It's actually something that is a collaborative opportunity for you to do things differently and hopefully have a lot less pressure put upon you because you'll be able to get your value. So him saying that was just like, yeah, it's kind of I think there's an ongoing challenge that's still out there. While the training is good, I think that the psychology of the planner around technology is still up in the air as far as when they don't have to, when they're not forced anymore, what will they do?
Sure. And with Maarten's work on the meeting architecture manifest, and I know you've done a lot of work in terms of strategy and meeting design and everything like that. I think it's really interesting this is a unique time. We're recording this episode in May of 2021. We are hopefully coming out of the pandemic. The involvement with planners in technology is unprecedented, and I hate using that word, but it's just one of those words. It just works. But how have you seen all of that? Because we've talked about technology, design of events, all these kind of things for years, and there seemed to always be this barrier and a little bit of what Maarten was talking about, right? This forced use of technology. But suddenly it's like you're just going to have to figure it out. Have we kind of developed at an amazing speed in terms of design, or was it just this like forced use of technology and we've figured it out?
The thing that I'm probably the most excited about from a standpoint of a line that's been crossed that can't be go back, and therefore we can't sort of be I don't know, let's
Rubicon.
say, yeah, is the investment. So like there's so much money that's been invested in these platforms and so many stakeholders that have an interest in the success of event technologies actually taking root, that that's not going to be thrown away, just because someone's like, I'd rather just have, a party and invite, people that I like, and hope for the best, like that kind of party planner mentality of days gone. Like the worst, I think, of kind of what we can be, our lowest potential. I think there's so much money invested in our highest potential now that that's going to push things more, people outside of their comfort zone more than anything else, because there's going to be investments made in training a new crowd potentially. Hopefully we didn't experience too much of a brain drain, but there's going to be enough energy and time put into that, because the investments have been made. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. So that part is exciting for me, because I know that money will make things happen, even against people's maybe feelings, because it'll be worked out. But that said, I think that there's still a gulf between what I would consider like the core reader of Event Manager blog, people who like technology, people who embrace change and have their thumb on the pulse, and then a large majority of planners out there who maybe aren't as participatory in the future, who have it kind of their thing figured out, and want to protect that. There's no room for that anymore. Like there's no room for protecting your fiefdom and just being a hack. Like there just isn't.
I wonder, because you were saying that hopefully there hasn't been a brain drain, but do you think that perhaps this has been kind of like a Darwinian litmus test for people who are disposed or not to use technology over the course of 2020? I mean, if anyone has left, surely it's those people who
they're one
are
group
more likely not to have been able to avail of the tech solutions that are there.
Yeah, I mean, I always hope for any kind of asteroid to come and wipe out the dinosaurs. I always hope for a kinder version of that. But at the end of the day, that's what's required, for progress. Those people gone, that just accelerates what would have happened already. From an objective macro level, I go, it is what it is. That's good. There is a negative though that I think is less seen, and that is the amount of young professionals who were bright minds, who were coming into an industry that was way more formed than it's ever been, and had a career path in mind and had an upward momentum that seemed plausible, and they couldn't weather a year without income. They were cut early. They definitely didn't see the stability in a time where it's not like it's millennials, before, where we're, like that's a group of people who was used to maybe not hunkering down and taking jobs that need to satisfy them monetarily. Like this is another generation that's more baby boomer-esque of knowing that you take a job that makes you money, and and events didn't look like that in 2020. So I don't know if I actually knew a number of people who have been on over the last 3 or 4 years, some of those 20, I don't know, what is it, like 50 for under 20 or whatever those groups are, those awards. And I know many of them that are not longer in the events industry. There's a lot of new realtors in the world, and there's a lot of there's a lot of other people who just took office jobs, in the same way that hospitality took a huge hit during COVID as well. People looked up and they said, do I have to do a job that I have to spend 40 hours by Wednesday, and then I have the rest of my week to still work? Do I have to do something that's this stressful? Is there some other way? And they were exposed to that, and they also saw that there was stability there, and many people made that decision. So the old dinosaurs who didn't change being gone, I hate to say it, I love all of you people, but you were going to go anyway. It's the people that couldn't afford to go through the disruption that, who had promise, that I'm really the most fearful on a macro level for the events industry. And I think technology probably offers the best opportunity to bring those people on board, and to give them a position that allows them to make an impact in the events industry, and maybe there'll be crossover.
Yeah. I mean, if you were talking about the pre-pandemic job prospect being 40 hours by Wednesday, then surely, much as we've started to incorporate things like Excel that we might not have used or being as familiar with like 25 years ago. Some technology is just here to stay because it presents you with advantages that become de facto expectations for your job performance, right? They're just things you have to get up to speed on as par for the standard course at a certain point. Do you think that virtual event technology and or any of the developments over the last 15 months have kind of fit anything close to that bill?
From a standpoint of available education, due to much more of a proliferation of evergreen content that's laying around, yeah, I mean you can definitely, if you're scrappy and you're and you want to be able to self-educate, I feel like it just seems like there's way more content out there that will get you there faster. Your ability to maybe have more thoughtful exchanges with people that are at peer levels, as opposed to 10 years ago where it was Twitter and you kind of had to jump on a hashtag and ride that for 6 months. You can potentially have a more long-lasting, more meaningful connection that is a little bit closer to trust building that would happen in face-to-face, although not the same in virtual. There's a few different opportunities, in that way. I think there's also jobs. I think that with the investments that have been made in virtual events, I think we have an opportunity to expose young professionals specifically to opportunities in live events. Like we at All City, we've been hiring like crazy over the last few months, and I even took somebody on my team specifically who he told me, he's like, I just want to get into live events. I don't know how though. Like, I don't know how, I don't know what angle, but I really want to get into it. And I'm like, well, look, we have this. You'll be able to talk to people in every, scope of event production, and you'll be able to see it from this level. You'll be able to do it remotely, and maybe you'll get a feel for what you like in the live as well. And maybe there's something that will be able to give you exposure to something that would at a time where it's maybe a little bit less lean in the live events industry. So who knows? I think there's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be, the cross pollination hasn't happened yet. We talked before in a previous conversation about this idea of live event professionals going to technology and joining the dark side. I think the next phase, which will be super fascinating, is the actual, the migration the other way. And hopefully that's what we get. We get this exchange in a kind of like way that, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, two warring families get married or something, or give a baby to each other, some weird thing like that. I want that, right? I want the mind exchange, and I want, and I think that's going to happen a lot faster. I think there's going to be event tech people that will actually see live events and be like, I could just do this myself. I could produce this event, and they'll that I've seen that before. It's really fun when you see a vendor, providing a lot of solutions for an event and going like, I think I could produce my own events. Like, I think I got it. I think virtual will likely give a lot of parallel skills to new minds who will come at live events in a completely different way.
I've seen definitely a lot of jobs going on the planning side at the moment, so hopefully that's also a good sign, and they'll be equivalent or kind of at least appealing to those on the tech side. Or interesting developments coming up for sure. I wanted to touch on something a little bit that Maarten talked a lot about, which is this idea of designing the experience of the event, and this focus on the smaller group conversation, and how that is, according to Maarten, at least, from what he said, is really the thing that has the best scores, is really the thing that people remember, take away with them. And I mentioned that some planners and some participants aren't necessarily looking for participation or that real, deep engagement, particularly on the online events. And Maarten was very clear that he believed that it was just a thing you had to get over, right? It was like a butterflies feeling. It's like, once you get over that, that'll really be the best experience. How do you see that? And I know with All Seated, part of the experience can also be the small group experience or the casual conversations. Is that something you think about a lot?
I don't even know what percentage of satisfaction from our attendees and clients comes from those. If it's lower than 80%, I would be shocked. The small exchanges are the big deal when it comes to people on our platform, for sure. We are not a broadcast first platform. We're not a like, our first priority is not content distribution. Our first priority is making connections and giving people the opportunity to make the connections that they want to make at the pace that they want. There's not a timer timing you down to give you anxiety in each exchange. It's not that. It's you need to be able to freely connect with other people as best you can. And that's how every event really is scored. All of our testimonials come from things in like that, from exchanges that are probably 5-6 people tops, but more often 3-4. And the feelings that people have, the emotional anecdotes that we get back are things like, I was tired after attending your event. We were like, oh, well, we're sorry. Like, what did we do wrong there? And they're like, no, I was on. Like, I was actually physically on the whole time because I was really engaged and I was there. I wasn't also doing emails. And we had a lot of people, which myself included, actually, I shouldn't even say this, but I jump on some events of, clients that are just to, walk around or whatever. And I have the intention of saying, I'm just going to go on for like 30 minutes, pop in the platform, see if there's anybody I know, and then pop out because I have, I work for them. I can have that luxury. And I stay for like an hour or two. And I'm like, I didn't, I have to text my wife, I'm not coming down for dinner. That's that's like, that's a different proof. And that only comes from, that's because the content was on, was fire. That wasn't it. Like the content, I'm very, very accustomed to just saying like, I'll consume it when, later in archive. I'll consume it, when it's something that makes sense for me in the style I want, whenever I want, on demand. To me, that's what I expect from content. I know that's not the same for everyone, but that's my type. What I will get caught up in is a good conversation, and I'll let everything else slide. Like, even one thing that we see. So here's another crazy, really quick anecdote that was just like everything to me as far as what we are as a platform. Planner, I was having a conversation with an industry event. There was a speaker, and there was an announcement made. Everybody go up front, and we're going to hear the speaker present. And we were in this conversation of like 5 people who all knew each other, been in the industry for quite some time. And one of the planners said, "Couldn't you force everyone from a platform level to go up front?" And I said, "Yeah, we won't, but we could from a technology standpoint. It's really easy. I could take over the audio. We could move their avatar, against their will." And she was so excited when she heard that, because it's probably her dream as a planner to be able to, physically move a human being against their will and put them in front of a presenter where they're supposed to be. And I said, yeah, but when you do that, you miss out on not only to the quality of the engagement for that person, how they score it. Like, this conversation is more meaningful to them. What if they were in a conversation that was the deal of a lifetime, the person that they needed to meet there? And the presenter's going to speak now, and that it get whisked away. So that doesn't happen for that person. And number one. Number two, from a planner standpoint, you don't get that data. Like, you get to find out, okay, so these small groups of conversations, like this is actually what's important for these types of people. So you can even get more specific as far as who are these people in these small conversations, from a persona level, from a data level. You can design better to design more opportunities for these small meetings that are better for that group. All those things go away when you guide people too much. So that's one thing that I think we look at quite a bit when it comes to these small opportunities to have conversations. I think the hallway conversations are the meat of an event, and that sometimes the content is, I don't know, the sizzle. It's totally opposite of a lot of people's thoughts on that, I grant you. But I think that it's those things that you don't expect in the conversations with a couple people that pay for everything else that you do while you're away or while you're at a virtual event.
That's so interesting. That's sort of the philosophy and the take behind All Seated, and I think it makes a lot of sense given what Maarten was saying. I am curious though, if like, I've been in events where I've tried to network with people and find really productive people to have productive conversations with that would either make a lucrative and or productive connection in an ongoing basis down the line. And I've definitely had a lot of impromptu conversations that didn't really go anywhere with people who were not qualified. And there's a certain kind of randomness associated with moving around a general event space. So do you think that, particularly given that we're all, at least for now, indulging this kind of virtual space, that there's room for smaller niche events that create a more cultivated, more curated audience in general, rather than sort of trying to package everything into a couple of annual conferences where everyone shows up, and you're trying to do that with a much broader pool of people who may not be as relevant to you?
I don't think, and this is a really this is a really broad statement, and not, maybe not exciting for everybody to hear, but I don't think an event with 5,000 people is a smart design. I think it's necessary, but I don't think it's smart. I can't network with many more people than a certain handful anyway. We have the technology and the tools now to be more purposeful, to be more use algorithms, to use personas, to use event data, to be able to put people in the same rooms that should be together. Um, of all the models that exist now, the one that has me the most excited, frankly, is hub and spoke. Like, I think it's the best of both worlds. I think it gives you the opportunity to have that community epicenter, to have lots and lots of people excited about a specific date, and to make everyone feel like they're part of a community and have that belonging that is required. Like, I think of WEC as a good example. Like, I can shorthand, have conversations with people and talk about that as the thing that we're all looking forward to, and it works. It's excitement, and that having 50 of those things spread across the calendar would diminish the impact and the potency of all the time spent on it. It would be very hard to market too. But the hub and spoke kind of takes that and says, well, what if we, put different people in different venues in different cities, and online and face to face, or what have you, based around a number of different criteria, to give you the community comes together, and also the networking and connections to be much, much more intentionally designed. Because even with 5,000 people in a room, tell me what your intentional networking design is. I mean, sure, there's probably sessions and things like that with like overly designed, questions that people have to ask each other, or there's some kind of like, third party matchmaking thing on top of what's happening. And it always feels kind of, to me at least, awkward and not that human. I don't like I don't like shot clocks for networking personally. I don't like, I don't know. I don't like a lot of that stuff. Like, I just want to be a person that sees another person and has a conversation. I understand what you're saying, Dylan, is that there's a lot of chance associated with that, and therefore it becomes very risky. That's where I think the smaller events really reduce that. There's a little bit more moving parts, obviously, with hub and spoke. I think there's more money though, and like, to me, as long as there's a balance of more money when there's more details, then it's okay. There's more sponsors with hub and spoke, for starters. You could have, if you have 10 events, you have 10 presenting sponsors, and a lot more intention behind the alignment of the sponsor with the event itself too. If you have all the IT people in San Francisco and they're going there, and all the C-suite are in New York, and the sponsorship becomes much more pure, and that's really what matters more than numbers, is the quality. I think it pays for itself very quickly when it comes to the complexity. And then I think virtual offers a huge opportunity to be part of that, as not only the broadcast aspect of it to all the live spaces, but also of the virtual attendees should be also selected as well to be a certain type.
I mean, that's quite interesting. And yeah, just to wrap up, I guess I'd like to just wrap up by asking you, what's your advice to people? Because I think a lot of planners are getting requests for, hey, we have this 10,000 person event or this 5,000 person event. And if they want to go back to their boards and at least get them to consider doing smaller events, what would you give them? What kind of weapon would you give them to go into the boardroom with?
Look at retail and show that, like, the boutique is absolutely what is succeeding. The quality of the face to face. It's not about quantity, and it's about trust acceleration that happens only when it has the opportunity to breathe. Show them parallels in other industries where the mass is being done, in this place, and then the very select experiential is happening in this space. But I mean, honestly, if I'm selling it to people, the thing I said before, that was probably the easiest way. You want more sponsors. You want a pure connection between our external stakeholders and the people they're supposed to talk to. Let's break this up, and let's do this in a variety of forums. Even when it comes to like virtual, being able to have different series and tracks that are over time, that align very specific niche groups with niche sponsors. That's okay. Like, you either buy quality or quantity when you're a sponsor. Sometimes there's those happy mediums where you get both, but oftentimes either one will do. It's big funnel or a very tight high closing percentage. Both are fine. Closing is all that matters. So for me, I would follow the money first and say, here's why this is the best experience for our external stakeholders, because it's a better experience for the internal stakeholders. It's all the same game. Everyone wants a very, very curated experience, because there's so many more options outside of face-to-face gatherings now, that you don't need to go to a live event, period. And if you do, it should be something that is special and something that is only for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick. I think that's really interesting and great advice, and a great thing to leave our listeners with. So thank you for listening, everybody. Nick, thank you for being with us. And thank you all, Seated, for sponsoring the Events Manager podcast. We hope to see you again, or hear you again, or be with us again in some sense very soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.